Hi, this is a continuation of a series where I'd like to explore this topic of what ails OFDMA. This is part 2. There's going to be another part where I'm going to maybe talk about what could be done about this possibly, or at least how do we manage in this context. My name is Shrikant and I am with NanoCell Networks. Remember that in part 1, I spoke mostly about the downlink. So in this part 2, I'll talk about the uplink issues, which are in my opinion slightly more serious. Why do I say that? Because remember that at least on the downlink, the AP had the data and then of course being the scheduler for the downlink, it had to manage with the various complexities. On the uplink, the challenge is that the data is present with the stations or clients and the AP has to schedule. Now you might argue, doesn't LTE do all of this? Yes, but remember in LTE, as I mentioned for the downlink, this is the only method, which is only the E node B schedules. And this continues for 5G as well with the G node B. So there is no other option. What do I mean by no other option? I'll explain in just a moment. Remember that in Wi-Fi, there is the old style, what we call SU option. That is always available for clients. Okay. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. But now for the uplink, you need a lot of cooperation from the clients. And unlike the LTE or 5G, where that is a given, because the only way uplink transmissions can happen in LTE or 5G is by the schedule given by the base station, which means stations are sort of forced to cooperate by sharing what are their resource requirements, etc. So even though we have things like buffer status reports in the 802.11ax standards, there is no compulsion for the stations to share that information. Okay. So there is an open question now as to when should station AP do this allocation for stations on the uplink. What is the optimum conditions? Because we really don't have an up-to-date idea of what might be pending at the stations. Should there be some type of frames which might go in uplink MU? Is there any way of optimizing uplink throughput? These are very difficult questions to answer in Wi-Fi because of the uncertainty over whether we know what is the exact status, because remember clients have the SU option. Okay. What do I mean by these clients have the SU option? Remember that the trigger frame is the scheduling frame for the uplink. But while the AP might be preparing the trigger frame based on some idea of the station's buffer, stations are also contending for the channel to send that data on SU. Remember, no station is going to wait for a trigger forever. Is there a guarantee that the trigger is going to come at a certain moment? No. How long should the stations wait? And if you are a station or a client designer, wouldn't you want to give the best throughputs for your clients? So you're going to always compete with the access point. Okay. And when you compete and when you win access to the channel, then what happens to the old buffer status? And which is what the trigger frame is based on. Isn't that resource going to go fully or partially waste? Isn't that going to result in poorer uplink throughput as compared to plain SU? So these are very tricky questions, which 11ax I don't think has the answer as yet completely. So if you look at from the client side, why should they implement all the fancy thing in 11ax when there is no direct benefit for them, because they can't put something in a box with a numerical benefit. Yes, they can claim Wi-Fi 6, but if there are slightly more conscious customers, they might ask, what does Wi-Fi 6 bring to the table? In fact, that is something that I will talk about in the next part. Okay. It's not only that, for supporting all this, there is a lot of complexity increase because we have to synchronize on time, frequency, and power for the uplink multi-user transmissions. Why would low-cost clients do all of that when they can't really see a benefit for themselves, which they can advertise? Okay, so this is a big question. I really don't know whether client vendors are thinking along these lines because many of the current Wi-Fi 6 announcements are flagship smartphone products which want to have the latest and the greatest. But as we go from that to the more broader section of the client device, these questions might come up because there is a definite cost due to all this complexity and so on. And remember, given the option, Wi-Fi clients want to optimize for themselves, and themselves implies why would they wait for a trigger or cooperate nicely for the trigger based uplink MU operations. So this makes uplink MU in the current context a little challenging and dicey. Okay, so on the downlink there is problems with respect to allocation, etc., etc. On the uplink, there are fundamental problems apart from that, in the sense what justification do clients have to cooperate in this whole process. So this makes it very tricky for uplink MU, at least from the data perspective, to work smoothly, unlike say an LTE or a 5G case. So I hope that was useful. Um, Please take a look at our website as well as for Wi-Fi Now Academy. We'll be back with more information. Thank you.